way I'm going. There ain't got no way I'm gonna make it without my Lord. No, ain't got no way I'm gonna make it without my Lord. No, ain't got no way I'm gonna make it without my Lord. No. There ain't got no way I'm gonna make.
I'm on stage. Okay, so let me take the opportunity to introduce George P. Brooks. He's having an issue with his camera. If it's not one thing, it's the other. Okay, so let's just put it to you mildly as we possibly can. So George P. Brooks is the founder and CEO of Metta Association, a nonprofit organization that advocates for the mentally ill and works toward the well-being and recovery of those affected by mental illness. Having been affected by mental illness has given him insight and has helped him to focus his passion and drive to help others. As a result, he strives to combat the stigma that is often associated with mental illness through education and spreading awareness. This guy is involved in management consulting, life coaching, career development coaching, leadership development, Metta Mindset Mentoring, and coaching. And here it is. He has been living with a mental illness since age 7. He has lived through abuse, weight loss, surgery, childhood obesity, health issues, and addiction. That's why he's on the program. But George has experienced raising a son with mental illness and has lived through divorce trauma and custody battles as well. He lives the challenges of each day and counts the strength and wisdom he gains from his journey as a blessing. He has learned and experienced a lot and is eager to inspire others. So, George P. Brooks, can we hear from you, my brother?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. My name is George P. Brooks, and I would say more, but your introduction I think did me justice. And one of the things that in my life in dealing with my own mental illness that began at age 7 was dealing with the cycle of depression. My diagnosis is
Mm,
bipolar, and that's
okay.
categorized by having extreme high mood swings or extreme low mood swings. They go back and forth, and it's a terrible illness. It's a horrible illness.
Hmm.
It's exhausting. It's tragic. It affects every aspect of your life. But one of the things you must do in dealing with your real mental illness, because a mental illness is not an aberration. It's not something that's in your mind. It's not something you can just pray away. It's a real, actual condition. They've done brain scans of my brain next to a normal person's brain, and my brain looks different because I'm bipolar. So, first thing I want to do is get people to destigmatize mental health in terms of thinking that it's something you can control. It's an illness. If you have a heart condition, you have to take medication for that. You have to manage it, but you can't make it go away. And it's the same
Hmm.
thing with mental illness. So, one of the things I've learned to deal with is my depression. There are times when I can be depressed and I don't know why. It's just my brain chemistry. So the
Okay.
question becomes, how do you deal with your mental illness? How do you deal with your depression? First of all, admit that it's real. Admit that what you're going through is real. You really are
Okay.
feeling what you are feeling at that time. It's not
Yeah.
something in your mind. It's not something you can get over. You can't tell somebody get over a depression and it works. It's a real issue. So
Hmm.
once you're able to accept that in your own mind and realize that you have condition, you can begin to address it. Your mental health is no different than a chronic health condition. You have to go to the doctor, you have to take your medicine, you have to be in therapy,
Yeah.
regardless if you have a mental illness. Now, another part of it, and this doesn't go with everybody, but this is me. For a lot of my life, I ran from my relationship with God.
Hmm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when I had a 10-year cocaine addiction, I was down to 135 pounds. I was dying. I hit my first rock bottom. And then that's when God spoke to me. At a moment on the couch, I was in the midst of my mental illness, in the midst of my misery. And he said, I'm not done with you yet. So
Hmm.
that really fortified my recovery and addressed how I deal with my mental illness. Prayer is as much a part of my day as me taking my medicine. I
Okay,
get up and
great.
pray every morning at 3 in the morning, just like I get up
Uh-huh.
and take my medicine at 3 in the morning, just like I talk to my therapist once a week, just
Okay.
like I deal with my mental health. You have to do both. And I think a lot of times, and I notice this, me being in America, I notice a lot of times when I deal with other countries or other nationalities, they almost tend to not even address the mental health aspect of it and just stick straight to the spirituality. They talk a lot
Uh-huh.
about God, which is good. We got to understand, not everybody believes that. So you have to have a way for people that aren't believers to treat their mental illness in a way that's going to make them feel comfortable for the well-being of all people. So
All
I
right.
believe that for me personally, and this is not to anyone else, but God has been important to me in my recovery.
Okay.
Even though, when I'm in the midst of depression or the midst of mania or the midst of pain or the midst of strife, I pray. But you have to understand, prayer can only do so much if you don't do your part.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
you can't say you can't sit there and pray about your mental illness and say, I'm not going to take my medication because I don't believe in it. That's silly. You can't sit there and say, I don't need to talk to a therapist. That's silly. So, definitely the one thing that I definitely preach about and talk about is taking care of your mental health. Taking care of, because so many, especially as Black folks, we don't, because we weren't taught to. We weren't taught
Okay.
to go, we aren't being taught to go talk to somebody, go talk to a doctor, go talk to somebody if something's going on with you. We have not
Yeah.
expressed or dealt with our mental health at all, and all it's done is set us back as a people. And it's time for us to finally start dealing with those things so we can improve our community, so we can improve our countries, we can improve the economy, we can improve
Mm-hmm.
society by dealing with our mental health. Because once you deal with your mental health, everything else can fall into place.
Okay.
And people don't know that. And that's why it takes people like me who've lived it since age 7. I'm 46 now, so I've been living with bipolar for 39 years.
Yeah.
So I know what I'm saying. But you just have to be open. And I want to thank you for inviting me and having me in this venue, because conversations like this are really what's going to go a long way toward destigmatizing mental health to the point where we can heal and we can get help.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it brings me to this question, and I'm glad you used the word stigma. How can we reduce the stigma around seeking mental health for issues that are challenging us mentally daily? Direct
Right.
mental health, professional mental health.
I feel that getting rid of the stigma involving mental health begins with us as individuals, and us is each person, thinking about how we think of mental illness. Why do we think of it that way? How
Uh
is it
huh.
affected us? Introspection is the best way to stop stigma, because if you can get a person to think about something like mental illness and the gravity of it and really explore it,
Mm-hmm.
then they don't think as harshly toward it. They won't
Okay.
think, they'll be more understanding toward it, because, and that's one thing that's lacking in a lot of people in dealing with mental illness, is a lack of understanding, a lack of compassion. Because you may see somebody be able to walk around fine, no problems, have no physical problems, but mentally they're crippled
Yeah.
because of the illness. And unless we're willing to help them work through it and do some things, then they're never going to get better.
Mm. Wow. I love that. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, George.
Yes, sir.
So how does levels of stress from daily life contribute to mental health issues and struggles?
It can be the root of it. That's what we have to
Ah,
learn to deal. That's what we have to learn to deal with life. We have to learn to deal with those situations. We have to learn ways to cope. Even if you don't, I mean, you just look at a person that does not have a mental illness. Look at the things they go through, the stresses they go through. Just dealing with the economy, dealing with the world. So if a person without a diagnosable illness has that hard of an issue, imagine what someone with bipolar or with schizophrenia has to deal with. And
hmm.
once we learn
Yeah.
to put ourselves in each other, see, that's one thing about the pandemic, about COVID, is that if you notice, we weren't having these talks about mental health before COVID.
Yeah.
Before, when COVID happened and everybody, people without conditions, were in their house and we were all going stir crazy, and people started thinking, well, you know what, we can talk about mental health because mine is affected.
Hmm.
And this is something that we're not open to talking about. But like I said, in times, as we grow to talk about it, we're going to find ourselves and our world and everything gets so much better, because people will have that burden off them to be able to say, you know what? I have a mental illness, but I'm okay.
Yeah.
I develop things, but I'm okay. Like I'm a type 1 diabetic. I have to wear an insulin pump. I
Okay.
know if I don't have the insulin pump on, my diabetes might kill me.
Hmm.
It's the same with mental illness. So you have to treat it seriously, but you have to try to understand and have compassion for those dealing with it because it's not their fault. It's nothing they did to cause it. They were born like that. Most mental illness you were
Mm.
born is genetic. It's genetic disposition. It's not just
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not a spirit. It's not this. It's not that. It's an illness.
Okay. Okay.
And
Great. Yeah.
so
I'm glad that you cleared that up to a certain extent. I think we can go a little deeper. But
mhm.
before we head there, let's deal with the addiction aspect of it based on your personal experience. What
Right.
would you say are the root causes of people becoming addicted to substances that could bring further harm to them?
Well, I'm a personal believer of that. Addiction is nothing but the response to unresolved trauma.
Okay.
And that's why a lot of why I started using cocaine was to deal with my trauma and my pain, along with the ups and downs of my bipolar. So it became sort of a panacea for me. It was something that I relied upon
Mm.
to stop the pain,
Yeah.
and that fueled my addiction. And a lot of times, we with mental illness, we self medicate because for
Okay.
various reasons, many reasons. But we
Yeah.
do it because we feel like whatever this substance we're using is taking away the pain or numbing it for a while, and that's all it's doing is numbing it, but the pain's still there.
Mm-hmm.
So once you really get to a point where you're ready to recover and you're ready to do it for yourself, not for your mother, not for your children,
Mm-hmm.
not for your wife, not for anybody but yourself, and you're serious about it, that addiction will start to fade as you talk to a therapist and deal with that trauma. As you deal with your issues, that burden of addiction becomes lighter because that's how it happened to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Wow. Yeah. And what was your emotional condition like, George, having to deal with the reality of that struggle and not seeing a way out? You found yourself on your couch in the midst of your depression and your struggle, and emotionally, could you describe how that feeling was for you?
you feel dead emotionally. You feel dead inside.
Wow. Wow.
You can't when you're in the midst of a serious depression. Physically, it affects you. Physically, you might sleep for 2 or 3 days. You might not be able to get up, no matter how much you want to or how hard you try. That's just the reality of the situation. And being as far as my mental state, I was broken. I was completely broken. I had nothing to give anyone. I had nothing to give myself until I made the resolution to build myself up and worry about George and George's healing. Then I noticed things started getting better for me and things started getting better for those around me. So this state of mind when you're in a depression is one that if you've never been there, you cannot believe it. It's not a matter of being sad. It's not I'm sad. It's I can't move. It's that debilitating.
Mm.
And a lot of people don't see that. So you may see someone in depression laying around and can't get up. And you may
Yeah.
be like, get up and do something. It doesn't work that way. It's an
Okay.
illness.
Wow. Yeah. So it takes me to this particular aspect.
Mhm.
What does the recovery journey typically look like for someone dealing with both mental health issues and addiction at the same time? Where do you begin the recovery?
When you get sick of yourself, when you get tired of living the
Ah,
life you're living, because for about a year before I really embarked upon my recovery, I could not look at myself in the mirror for about a year before that. I was
wow.
disgusted with myself. I was
Uh huh.
disgusted with my life. I was disgusted with everybody. I was disgusted with everything until I got sick of George and went in that bathroom and made myself look at myself in the mirror. And I made a promise that day, hey, I'm finna recover hell or high water. Nothing happened, but I had to get to that depth to rise
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
And sometimes we have to do that. And it's not pretty to watch our loved ones go through it, but we have to understand mental illness. We have to address it so that when they do go through those moments, we are there to support them and encourage them and show them love that they need and that they deserve.
Mm, wow. Was there any specific warning signs that the family members would have noticed and would have pointed out and say to you, hey, I'm seeing something different. I'm hearing something different. The feedback that I'm getting from you, it's not normal. Were there anything that reached out to them or that they suspected that something was different?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. When you're in it, here's the thing about addiction. When you're in
Yeah.
addiction, you're not hiding it from anyone. It's
Ah,
obvious. I can see people walking down the street and say, hey, they've done this, they've done that just by mannerisms. You adapt so many behaviors when you become an addict. But yeah, my family and loved ones, they noticed all the signs, but at that point, I didn't care anymore. I was that low.
okay. Yeah.
So my relationships suffered. Now I've been able to repair most of them, through being accountable for what I did to them during my
Mm-hmm.
addiction. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the signs are there, and people will tell you, I noticed something, and they noticed it. But what can you do about it until you're at a point of healing? All you can do is wallow in that. And that's why it's so important that people understand you can heal. There's a method. I'm developing something called a Metta Mindset. I become a life coach. I now offer life coaching for primarily Black men, but all people dealing with mental illness. I help coach you through that process. You can go
Yeah.
to www.metta.com and sign up for life coaching. So if you're dealing with a mental illness, if you're adjusting to it, reach out to me. I'll help coach you through it. We don't have to let anybody know. Life coaching is a one-on-one thing, but that's something that I do to offer to people that are like me dealing with mental illness, as a way to try to help them and destigmatize people.
Yeah. Great. I love that. So let's get back to Meta.
Mhm.
Where did the inspiration and the idea came from? What was the birthing process like for you beginning that nonprofit that you just
Right.
fondly spoke about?
Right. Well, when I started to recover, I'd been on disability for 10 years. I hadn't been able to work, still unable to work a regular job. So I needed to find a way to fortify myself, and I was looking for my purpose. Because God didn't give us dreams and ambitions; those are man-made. But God gives us purpose. This is greatest gift to us
Okay.
is our purpose.
Okay.
And He
Okay.
showed me my purpose that day. He said, "Your purpose is to use what you've been through and use what I put you through to form a nonprofit and try to help people." And that's
Mm-hmm.
how I was born. It was born
Okay.
that day, July 18th, 2018. I
Mm-hmm.
remember the day it happened. It was about 4:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
But I started
Yeah.
my nonprofit, and we're still going to this day.
Very good. Wonderful. And how has the experience been like, George, dealing with people that you see have been through stuff like you have been through? What are some of the challenges that they are facing when they come to you or when you seek to help them with regards to the struggles that you know they are going through?
What I hear mostly from people when they talk to me is that I'm glad I finally found someone who understands.
Okay, I get that.
And that's what I hear most of anything. Your words really help me, or you understand, and that's helped them, not have that trepidation about embarking upon recovery, because recovery from anything is scary, especially mental
Yeah,
illness.
yeah.
You really have to look at yourself. So that's what I hear. I hear people say they're not afraid to talk about it anymore after they talk to me, because I'm so open about what I've been through. And
Mm,
that's part of my purpose. I have to be open about things that may be embarrassing or may cause people to look at me a certain way, because that's the only way I can reach people.
wow.
And so that's what I do.
Yeah. I know that community support is extremely important. I know that from my personal experience, in terms of not just what I do now as a life and development coach, but when I was going through my period of depression as well, and I felt lonely, I felt lost, I felt like I did not have my purpose in life, and
Mhm.
community made a big difference in terms of the recovery process. But not only that, helped me to realize that there was something much more that I was created for. And you just alluded to that about the purpose, having found your purpose.
Mhm.
How important it is for that discovery for someone who is in a similar position like you have been, George,
Mhm.
to recognize those both two aspects. One, you need community, you need people around you that's going to be there for you. And second, you need to find your purpose in life.
Um, as far as community, I've always been a bit of a loner, so I'm very selective about who I allow around me. So,
I
but
hear you.
having a tight circle is very important. You have to have people around you that you can rely on and that can rely on you to support you, and that's whether you have a mental illness or not. That's just life.
Mm,
That's just you have to be careful who you're around, because you know, everybody that says they're praying for you is not praying for you.
huh.
So you have to
Wow.
recognize that also. So there are different degrees to having people around you and community. And what was your next question? Your next part of the question?
Purpose, discovering their
Purpose. Yeah.
purpose. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Man, the way I discovered my purpose was so beautiful, because it came at a low point, and it was just like I had an epiphany. And it was like, now you have something to live for. Now you have something, and I'm giving you something to do that I'm charging you with. Get up and get to work. And it changed my life. But ever since then, it's been Metta. Now it's the life coaching. I hadn't made any money from it, so I am accepting donations on Cash App for my nonprofit, dollar
I
sign
hear
Metta
you.
Association, because we
I
got to
hear
keep
you.
this going. We got to keep
Yeah,
this.
yeah,
We got to do the work.
yeah,
But when
yeah,
she gave me
yeah.
my purpose, I was ready to go, and I've been running hard ever since. It gave me a reason to live. It gave me something to strive for. It gave me something to fight for.
Wonderful. I love your story, George. It's awesomely inspiring and truly amazing.
Thank
And
you.
we're gonna give you a moment to take a breath as I share the thought of the week. I'm gonna ask our producer to put up the thought of the week, and it really is aligning itself with the team and your message. I think to some extent. The thought of the week, it says, sometimes in life you have to surrender your rights for peace sake, but our rights in Christ is non-negotiable. I love the last part best. Sometimes in life you have to surrender your rights for peace sake, but our rights in Christ is non-negotiable. And we need to remember that. You can't negotiate the rights that Christ has paid that tremendous price for to give unto you people, because it is priceless. There's nothing we can do to supplement the cost of that. God given his only begotten son. But at the end of the day, what we get from it is tremendous. And we have to place paramount value on our rights in Christ, which gives us the opportunity to overcome sin, fear, doubt, and to manage all the challenges that we face in life on a daily basis. I must remind you in the audience, please, if you have your comments, you have your questions, we are here, George and I, and of course our producer, to ensure that we give you a response, because we love to know that you are proactively involved and engaged in the program, and whatever is being said is making a difference to you, sending a message to you that you can also send to someone, a loved one, a friend, a family member, a co-worker. It does not matter. This information is for everybody. So, George, what does the future look like for you in terms of the work that you're doing with regards to Meta?
Wow. We're working on a new website. We're working on writing some grants and getting some more programs going. We've done food drives. We do mentoring in schools. So we're looking at expanding upon that. And like I said, launching a new site and coming out strong. We plan on running Meta in conjunction with the life coaching to offer more solutions for people. Me personally, I'm working on some TV skits. I'm working with the TV network now. I'm doing podcasting. I formed a new YouTube channel. So um, I maybe sleep 4 hours a night just because things I'm working on to create some generational wealth and really try to help people dealing with mental illness see a way out.
Okay, okay. So, based on your personal experience and based on some of the people that you have helped thus far, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges facing people during the process of recovery, when they first have to admit, I'm all messed up, I need help, I have a problem? And
Mhm.
then the next step, where do some of them get that strength from?
You can only get that strength, like I alluded to earlier, when you really decide to do it for yourself. Because the
Uh-huh.
hardest part of helping anybody recovery is that initial step is getting them to admit they have a problem that they need
Mm-hmm.
recovery.
Mm-hmm.
After that, usually the only problem you have is them staying focused, them staying motivated, not listening to family who say, well, you're just going to relapse, not listening to
Ah,
society, but trusting yourself and trusting your belief in something higher than yourself, whether it be God or whatever. Believing in something higher than yourself can help ground you in your recovery. So those are the three things. First thing is admitting that you have a problem, being willing to address it. Second is that stigma that you have to deal with from family and naysayers and doubters when you're on the path of recovery, because that discouragement can set you back. And also just staying focused on your recovery, doing those little things day by day that build up consistency, that in the long run will help you get away from that addiction. Now, here's the funny thing about addiction. Addiction doesn't go away.
okay.
My addiction to cocaine hadn't gone away. It's just
Hmm.
moved to something else. So now I'm addicted to my nonprofit. Now I'm addicted to work. We all have a predilection toward addiction, each of us. But it's just a matter of what we choose to focus that on. So what I've done, I've taken those addictive tendencies that I've had, because I do have an addictive personality, and just transposed it into something healthier that would benefit people. So, if you're in recovery, don't think it's going to go away. It's not going to go away. But you have to find something beneficial to focus that addictive energy on in order to facilitate and fully realize your recovery.
Wow. Okay, so George, let me see if I get this straight. I've heard people say once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic.
Mhm.
And they try their very best to stay away from scenarios where a drink would be brought to them or a drink would be passed before them, that kind of thing. Some are
Right.
stronger than others. What you're alluding to makes for a very interesting perspective because you're saying that you had to take the addiction that you had for cocaine and put it into something as preferably the work that you're doing with a nonprofit.
Right.
How easy or how difficult or how challenging is it to make that transition from one level of addiction to a next?
It's easy. The only hard part is finding that purpose for you to transfer that addictive energy into. Is finding
Okay.
that positive thing, that fulfilling thing, to take all of that energy, all that hustle that you learn, and applying it to that, to something that can be positive and fulfilling you. So I was blessed in a sense I was able to find mine, but that's something that we all need to do, is try to realize our purpose.
I,
And whether an addict or not, because once you're an addict, you're always an addict. I call myself an addict all the time. I don't use cocaine. I haven't touched it in almost 7 years, but I still have that mindset. I still have those traits. I still have those characteristics. And once you can be okay with that, then you can apply that addictive
okay.
nature to something that's going to be beneficial and maybe even
I
make you
kind
some
of
money.
lost a bit of what you were saying there, if you don't mind repeating.
Mhm. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. What was I saying?
George, can you hear
Uh,
me?
yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, but what I was saying is that in terms of the habit,
Hey,
because you're
George,
always
are you
going.
there?
Yes, I'm here.
Dexter, can you hear me?
Yes. Okay.
I'm not, oh, I'm not hearing him.
Let's see.
I'm not hearing him at
What
all.
about what about now?
Yep, that's it. I
Okay,
got
you
you
hear me
back.
now? Okay.
Thank you, George.
Okay. But
Yeah,
what I was saying
I
was
just
that,
wanted you. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah. But once you're an addict, I mean, you're always gonna call yourself an addict. I mean, people that gone through
Hmm.
addiction and gotten through it. First of all, I salute those people because I know what that's like. I know what that feels like. But don't be afraid to just wear that badge of being an addict, because that can be you can draw strength from that. Don't look at it as something to be ashamed of if you survived it. Use it, because your journey can inspire others. I've actually met people out in the street I've ministered to because I found that we had some like issues. And I feel like that's important for not just those living with mental illness, but for all people. When we encounter someone out in the world that's going through something, we can identify, let alone help. If we can do that, do that. See, a lot of dealing with mental illness is dealing with the mindset of the world. We're a very selfish world.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
we
yeah.
very rarely ever put ourselves in somebody else's shoes or try to see things through somebody else's predicament. But we need to do more of that, not just in America, not just in Africa, but all over the world as human beings. Be more compassionate, try to be more empathetic, and that'll go a long way, because this stigma with mental illness is still holding so much back. There are people now that will not talk about their issues because they're afraid of being stigmatized. And that's the
Hmm.
most important barrier we have to break down in order to see any real recovery or any real progress in terms of how we as a society and as a world deal with those with mental illness.
Yeah, 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 exactly. What about your personal experience, George, in raising your son who would have had the unfortunate, uncomfortable reality of dealing with mental illness as well? What was that like for you when you discovered that he had those challenges that you had to deal with?
Right. He was diagnosed at age 7. I cried. When I got his
Okay,
diagnosis,
wow.
I cried. I will, because I knew what he was going to have to deal with, and I knew what I had to do as a father. He just turned 20 Saturday. We've been hanging out, and
Okay,
right now he. What I want to do with him, it's been very challenging. It's been very expensive. dealing with his bipolar rages, dealing with poor parenting on poor influences on the side of his mother's family. So it's been a challenge. This cost me one incident cost me $10,000 dealing with a
Wow.
bipolar son. So it's been a challenge. But what I'm trying to do is, now that he just turned 20 a few days ago, I'm trying to teach him those lessons to manage his bipolar that I had to learn in my 30s and 40s. So at 20, he's already getting those lessons. So he'll be better off. But it's my oldest son. I love my son.
Hmm.
He's clearly bipolar. He's had some
Yeah.
trauma. But I'm just trying to be his dad. I can't, now that he's over 18, I can't take care of him, but I can guide him. So that's what I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing and being so real and vulnerable, George.
Yes, thank
Is
you.
there a memoir? You're welcome. Is there a memoir somewhere in the making?
Definitely is. I'm definitely working on that. Probably I'm shooting for next year. I got several publishers already telling me they want it, so I'm gonna take some time, probably around my birthday, which is in February. Take a month and just get it done.
Okay, great. Gracie Vincent, are you hearing us now? I think that was about 31 minutes ago. I think we kind of sorted out the problem with the audio. It was on both sides actually, but I think she's supposed to be hearing now. That was about
Okay.
31 minutes ago. I'm just seeing it up on the screen. Yeah, so there could be something in the future with regards to a memoir. That's what you said, right?
Yeah, I'm working on it right now. I'm working on a couple books. One called Metta Mindset, in which I fortify what I use for recovery. Because in my recovery, I developed two things. One called the Metta Mindset, which is a way of thinking based on Stoicism. I'm going to outline that in the book. And I also come up with my five
Uh-huh.
pillars of recovery. Those are five tenets, five things that are integral to your recovery. So I'm developing those, and I'm going to integrate them into my memoirs, and hopefully they'll be out next year, God willing.
Yeah. I was listening recently, George, to one of our mentor coaches a while back, actually, and he said he dealt with someone who was living in a state of depression so
Hmm.
bad that it had to be part of what the community around them that they were living with just dishing out. And one of the things that he asked them is if they could move from where they were currently living after he had finished the sessions with them, because he said if they go back
Hmm.
to where they are currently living now after the sessions are completed, all the work that they did to address the depression and the other stuff that came along with that, that would go down the drain. And he didn't want that to happen.
That is so true, because there's
Wow.
no way, like in my situation, I was living in my
Uh-huh.
neighborhood. I had my cocaine dealer coming up to the house. He would bring me my stuff. And I
Wow.
realized once I got started on recovery and it started going good, that I had to move from that city I was in. There was no way I
Wow.
could stay in that same neighborhood and stay clean.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I moved 500 miles away to give myself a fresh start after my recovery, during my recovery. And that helped so much. So that's definitely true what you're saying, is that sometimes you have to make a move, a geographic move. Sometimes you have to remove people from your life. It might be your own mother or father. You may have to say, Mama, I can't deal with you. You're responsible.
Mm.
You're the reason for a lot of my trauma. I can't have anything to do with you in order to save myself. And sometimes it comes down to that. I've not spoken to my family in 7 years.
Wow.
And it has to be that way as part of my recovery. So my Thanksgiving was kind of lonely, but that's okay because I'm okay. I'm working on getting myself whole. I can't worry
Okay.
about my family with their stuff. I have to worry about me. But sometimes, yeah, you have to make that move. You have to leave that neighborhood. You have to leave that relationship. You have to leave that house. You have to leave those friends in order to survive. Because when you're recovered, you're in survival mode. I was homeless last year on the street, had a heart attack, was out on the street. So even when you're on recovery, it's going to be a constant battle. It's going to be a constant thing.
Wow. Incredible. And so what I'm hearing from you, George, is that sometimes you just have to make tremendous sacrifices
Right.
and
Right.
X out some people, X out the community, X out the relationship, anything that would continue to contribute to the building challenges of you retaining your true self, or at least managing yourself better. You have to cut them off, or cut it off.
You have to cut them off. And see, here's the thing: you have to get to that point where you can't cut them off because oftentimes with mental illness, we develop very unhealthy relationships with people, codependent
Ah,
relationships, uh, relationships where they actually enable our addiction or our abuse of ourselves through our mental illness. So sometimes you might have to cut off the person dearest to you. I mean, I ended up divorced when I went through recovery.
mm-hmm,
I had to let everything go. I had to let my kids go for a while to focus on myself to get myself to this point. And I'm still not where I want to be yet. I mean, I'm
yeah,
still working every day. I'm doing podcasts. I started the life coaching business. I got to make things happen. But I have to be well and whole to be any good to my kids, to be get any good to my friends, to be any good to my loved ones,
mm,
or any good on this venue.
yeah,
So you have to
yeah,
focus on yourself. And it's very selfish. You have to be very selfish in your recovery. But I like to say it's it's also a matter of self-interest. It's also a matter of self-interest, and you have to take care of yourself, and that will cost you people. Just in recovery, you're gonna lose people. Just know that everyone that's in your life
mm-hmm,
when you're using, uh, probably most of those people won't be there once you recover. And if nothing else, they won't deal with you the same. Those friends you used to get high with, once you stop getting high, they don't want to hang with you anymore because this the only thing you bonded over with your addiction.
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
I went through that situation. I've run into some people that I used to peruse with, and they're not interested in hearing what I'm trying to say. But that's how I knew my recovery had taken effect because I was no longer in that headspace anymore.
Mm,
I had elevated past where they are. They're still in the same. They're still doing the same stuff, getting high, the same stuff they were doing 6 years ago. But I see where I've elevated because of the work I put in, and it is as long as as long as you keep going and keep fighting and
yes,
take it day by day,
yes,
because my days are hard. My
yeah,
days are hard.
yeah,
And
yeah,
but as
yeah.
long as you keep going and keep striving and keep fighting, you'll be okay. Just have your
That's
faith in
right.
God. Just have your faith in God, man. Have your faith in yourself. Take your medicine, whether you want to or not. I don't care what anybody tells you. Don't take medicine; it's not good for you. Take your medicine because they don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah,
Talk to a therapist. Find you a good therapist where you can go and talk out your problems, talk out your processes. You have to do all those things. And people, and I'm not trying to be critical of people. People think all you got to do is run to church and pray about it. That's maybe 25% of it. It's a lot more involved in recovery. It's a lot more involved. And if you're not willing to do that, you will not be successful in recovery.
wow. Yeah. Okay, so next, please put up the comment by Gracie Vincent, the first one. She's my son born a mental and also got hooked on the drugs, but he's doing a little better. Still on the drugs, but not as before. I'm always there for him. He has the love, but God is in control.
Yes, ma'am. And one thing I would tell Gracie is just be patient with them and be supportive
Yeah,
because I just realized this. A lot of times, the people that we love that are watching us go through recovery or watching us struggle with addiction, they get impatient because they want us to be well. But they got to understand we got a lot to heal. We got a lot of mental trauma, emotional trauma we have to heal before we can really get to all that's part of recovery. People
yeah,
think recovery is simple, where you just stop using the drugs and it'll go away. No. You become addicted to more than the drugs. You become addicted to going to get the drugs. You can become addicted to getting the money for the drugs. You become addicted to hustling for the drugs. All that ties into addiction. So the way I used to hustle to get cocaine is the same way I hustle with my nonprofit. It just has to coincide, but you have to be patient with people in recovery. Be real
yeah,
patient. And the fact that
yeah,
he's in church and he's got support, that's a good thing. But you just give him time. Give him time. Because we didn't become this way in a day, in a month, in a year. It took years, sometimes decades. So please be patient and allow him time to heal from that. And just be supportive of what he needs.
yeah. As you speak about that, George, it reminds me that it is a process. I know
Right.
because I understand how these things work. Some of the things that people need to get really clear is that each of these processes are different. For
Right.
example, someone recovering from PTSD, it's a different process.
Right. Right.
Someone recovering from alcohol addiction, it's a different process.
Right.
So, how do we get people to understand that they now, George, as a family member, as a loved one who's supporting this individual, they need to get that information from a professional perspective and not just Dr. Google.
Right, right, exactly. And that's the thing. We as black people, as a diaspora, have always had issues going to the doctor anyway. How many men you know our age that don't go to the doctor?
Mm,
They'll be
yeah,
sick and just say, "I don't. I'll be okay. I'm a man." That's the
yeah,
dumbest thing. That's the dumbest way in the world to think. God put physicians here to help you. God put medicine here to
that's
help
right.
you. God put the
Yeah,
psychiatrists here to help you. How dare you not use them because of some belief that you have in God that's misguided? God doesn't always touch you directly. Sometimes God put people in place and the things in places to help you. And that's what the medication is for. And that's what the psychiatrists are for. And that's what the psychologists are for. So don't be afraid to use them. It does threaten your faith, but you have to mix things in a way that's going to give you a combination to where you can be effective in your recovery. It's going to take more than one thing. It's going to take more than one thing. But just understand that God put that medication, that pill you don't want to take here, because it's going to help you with that chemical imbalance. It's not going to heal you, but it's going to help you be able to manage and cope with your mental illness. And I think right now we have such a stigma against taking medication that needs to stop. That needs to stop.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow, it's an amazing thing. Some of the stuff that people are either misled by or they don't really understand. So
Right.
Grace Douglas says, very interesting program. I have learned a lot. And see, that is the kind of feedback that we like,
Right.
because at the end of the day, this is not about me or Dexter or George. This
Mhm.
is about you, the people that are on the program, watching, listening, and those who will see it later as it's recorded. Gracie Vincent says Brother Andy and Brother Wendell was his mentor. I still am. It's just that I don't see him now as much, sister. But I'm still here for your son always. It's not going to be anything else different at any point in time of my life. So we're really grateful for your comments and your continued commitment to the program. So George, I'm looking at something here and I'm thinking about uh, generational stuff.
Right.
Um, in terms of you spoke about the genes and the imbalance of the genes and the chemical imbalance, and then you spoke about the separate aspect, which is the spiritual aspect of it, which help you in many ways to find your purpose and your calling and to
Right.
bring you to where you are now. How do we get someone to accept a holistic approach to recovery and to understand, George, that it takes a combination of all these things put together for them to get a fully comprehensive idea of how they need to recover?
Okay. You are doing the best thing right now for that situation by having a broadcast like this and us having this conversation, because that's the only way people are going to understand how to address mental illness, by listening to people that are actually living with it and have lived with it most of their lives and have
Uh-huh.
found things that work for them. And you're exactly right. It does take a holistic approach, but it also takes a pharmaceutical approach too. So you have to mix
Mm-hmm.
and you have to find a way to combine the natural remedies and the natural uh, ways to heal yourself and sustain yourself mentally with going to the doctor, with taking your medicine. So it's a combination of things. It's just, when you're bipolar, it takes about 10 years for them to find a cocktail of medications that work for you.
Wow.
Took me about 10 years, takes about average about 10 years. Then the funny thing, you may find a good cocktail of combination, a good combination cocktail of drugs. It may work 2 years, then all of a sudden it'll just stop working. You got to start over all over again.
Mm-hmm.
See, those are the things that frustrate people dealing with mental illnesses, managing medication and things like this. So I think by us having this discussion, because I'm sure most people didn't know that, but now that they know it, they can carry that with them in their own walk with mental illness or in their walk with a loved one dealing with mental illness.
Yeah. Man. And I had a brother recently that was bipolar.
Mhm.
Um, Unfortunately, a lot of stuff didn't go right with him, and he died. We buried him probably about 5 or 6 months ago.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I observe is that when he didn't take his medication, there was this different personality that came out,
Right.
and full of anxiety and desire and rush for a lot of things. And he spoke about lithium. Could
Right.
you Could you shed some light on that for us, George?
Oh my goodness, let's talk about lithium. I was on lithium for a long time
Uh huh.
during my 20s and stuff. And it works. I mean, the thing about lithium is that it works so well as a mood stabilizer, but the side effects will make people think you are dying. It will cause tremors, it will
Uh huh.
cause shakes, it will cause confusions. But in terms of dealing with my bipolar, it worked beautifully. It just wrecked
Wow.
everything else. So the thing about medication is that you have to keep in mind the reason a lot of people don't want to take medication is because they may start on one medication, don't like the side effects, stop taking it. Well, with psych meds, you may have to allow a month or two for those side effects to abate to where you can start seeing the effects. It's not like you take a pill at 8 o'clock and you're better by 9. It may take a few weeks. But the thing is, they're coming up with so many drugs now that can help treat bipolar that if one doesn't work, just try another one. Work with your physician.
Mm.
Talk to your doctor. Be honest about your side effects. And that's one thing we need to stop doing is lying to our doctors. How many
Yeah.
times do we go to the doctor with one thing and don't tell them about the other 5 things?
Yeah.
And then we expect him to get us well, expect him to help us. It doesn't work like that. You have to be transparent. So,
Yep.
but just be transparent about that medication because I can tell you, I'm on about 17 different medications every day now for bipolar
Okay.
and health issues, and I have to take it.
Okay. Yeah.
Some things don't work. I just call my doctor, say, hey, this is not working anymore. Can we try something else? Can we increase the dosage? You have to work at your mental illness. People are lazy. They'll get a nice car and wash their car every day if they got to. But when it comes to this up here, that mind and their body, they won't
Mm.
work in.
Wow. And what about the commitment to a proper dieting in terms of the food intake and exercise? What
Food and
role?
exercise. Yeah.
Yeah.
You
What
have to
roles do they play in the process as well, George? Tell us.
try to eat as clean as possible because the serotonin is a chemical that's made in our brain that affects depression. And most of it is generated in our stomach. So
Yeah.
so much of what we eat ties into it. I try to eat basic food. I try to eat foods that's not overly stimulating. Um, I just try to eat to fuel my body. When I get in recovery, I changed the way I eat, way I ate. I used to eat for pleasure. Now I just
Okay.
changed. I look at what I got to do today. Okay, what do I need to eat? Do I need to eat more carbs today? Do I need to eat more protein? And that's helped with my bipolar too because it helps keep me balanced. So pay attention to your diet and what you eat, and just don't pay attention to the diet in terms of things we put into our bodies. Let's take care of things we put into our mind, the social media we watch, the media we watch, the movies we watch, the music we listen to. A lot of times they can trigger us into an episode, especially if you're bipolar, that you may not be aware of. So you have to be
Yeah.
conscious of your whole diet, your spiritual diet, your mental diet, your emotional diet, and and as far as what you eat as well.
Yeah. So Grace says must take your medication. Gracie, that is.
Right.
I look. Here's the thing about it, George. I listen to people. I listen to friends. I listen to families who, over the years have been struggling with stuff. And one thing that you just pointed out to alluded to that makes so much sense is that you have to find ways and means to figure out what works for you
Mhm.
and how you can protect yourself,
Right.
social media included. I mean, if it means spending less time on Facebook, get off the phone, get off the tablet or whatever you're using, and focus on doing something that would help you in your recovery process.
Right.
So, how do we help people to get that level of discipline where they do only things most of the time that would be proactively helping them in the recovery process?
We can't because you
Ah,
just said, how do we give them discipline? You can't give somebody
yeah,
discipline.
yeah.
They either exhibit it or they don't. All you can do is provide an example and provide guidance and provide
Mm,
words of wisdom. But as far as them
yeah.
having discipline and doing it, they got to do that themselves. It's nothing you can do to motivate.
Wow.
Motivation
Okay.
is internal. We can inspire people, but we can't motivate them. And a lot of
Okay.
people get those two things confused. Motivation is what's inside of you. Inspiration can be external. So I try to
Hmm.
inspire people, try to transform people. But as far as them having consistency and discipline and doing the work, I can't do that. So I can provide an example. I can give my testimony. You can contact me anytime to help, to advise. My life coaching business, I'm there. I will walk with you, but you're going to have to do the work yourself.
Yeah. Is it challenging to get partners to work with you in terms of the work that you want to do? Because I know you want to do more. I can hear it in your voice. I can feel the passion. Is it challenging to get partners who would actually come in and say, "Hey, George, I like what you're doing here. This is great. Let's get on board. Let's work together."
Right. Well, the thing about that is that I don't have a problem meeting collaborators. It's just with the pandemic and the bad economy, nobody had money to fund a lot of the things that we wanted to do, a lot of the projects.
Okay.
And that's
Okay.
why I'm so heavy on fundraising on Cash App, Metta Association, and because we have to have a way to fund these programs. They're not going to happen by themselves.
Hmm.
So, we need money to help people. We need your help to help others. And
Yeah.
and that's just the thing. As far as collaborators, I mean, I could reach out to people now and they see my purpose and they'll sign on, but we have to have money to make these things happen. And that's why, especially if you're running a nonprofit, donations are so important. So please support your nonprofits because they're the ones really doing the work in the communities. Support your small civic organizations financially in any way that you can, because they're the ones doing the real work. They're the ones that were boots on the ground. So that's just how I feel on that.
Yeah. Okay. So next, we just want to run the thought of the week one more time as we coming down to close off this thought of the week. Sometimes in life you have to surrender your rights for peace sake, but your rights in Christ is non-negotiable. Let me repeat. Sometimes in life you have to surrender your rights for peace sake, but our rights in Christ is non-negotiable. I just want to share a bit of my personal story. My father was a very humble man in terms of in the neighborhood, everybody knew him, he knew everybody. Thank you for the thought of the week, dear Dex. And there were times when he would be walking through the neighborhood, and every time he met somebody, even if he didn't know them, he would say, "Hello, hi, how you doing?" As a young man, I found that kind of, you know, why do you have to reach out to everybody? And eventually I got up the courage to ask him the question, and he said to me, "Everywhere you go, you could never tell when you're going to need somebody to give you at least a cup of water." And it's about being neighborly because you want somebody else to be neighborly to you, and you don't know when that moment would come. And it's only when he said that to me, George, it made sense. I just couldn't see why he had to be so like ultra friendly to everybody. And so sometimes in life we meet situations and circumstances where we don't fully understand what is happening because something may be required of us that we may feel discomforted by. But if we take time out to sift through all the cobweb and all the clogs and all the AI and all the social media, we realize that behind all these things, there could be a purpose. And I know you're big on purpose and finding your purpose and falling in line with your purpose. How now is it so important for you to realize that in your relationship with God, you have to have a more open mind to what is happening around you because you can never tell when that aha moment is being prepared for you. You don't.
So,
You don't. Yeah.
right, right. We don't know. And the thing is, one thing I realized in pursuing my purpose is that my purpose is not just for me. I have to be
Ah,
aware of how things go because my purpose may be meant to fulfill and sustain somebody else's life in some sort of way.
yeah.
So your purpose is not only important for you, it's important for how it affects other people, depending on what your purpose is.
Yeah.
So, that's what I go by. I mean, there are a lot of things that like financially, I'm looking for donations right now. That's my major challenge is income, donations to make this stuff go. But I realize I'm going through that because maybe in some kind of way, what I'm going through is going to serve someone else's purpose. Maybe some kind of way is meant for me to feed into them, and maybe that's what God wants me to do as part of my purpose, which is to enrich others. So I just try to keep that in mind when I'm going through things, because Lord knows I'm going through them now. But hard times aren't always meant to test us. Sometimes they're meant to enrich others, and we have to keep that in mind. Our struggles can sometimes be meant to benefit our fellow man. And
Yeah,
if
that's
you
that's
want to with
really
that
powerful.
mindset, yeah, it makes
Yeah.
it gives you more resolve in dealing with what you got to deal with in life.
Yeah. That's deep and that's powerful, George, and that's actually true.
Right.
I think that's the way that Christ really impacted the lives of many people. because he was going through stuff, but he was always thinking about the well-being of his people,
Right.
and that makes a world of difference. So, two more things I want to ask you because we're just about 3 minutes before wrapping up.
Okay.
The first thing is when you look back at your life now, George, and you count through the different experiences that you have been through. If you had the opportunity, would you go back and change anything, or would you just continue accepting it as your reality?
I would change some things. I would change some decisions I made and some people that I align myself with. But other than that, as far as what I've been through, as far as the pain that's been inflicted upon me, either self-inflicted or otherwise, I wouldn't change that because that's made me who I am today. And evidently,
Yeah,
God wants me to be this person for a reason. So I'm not gonna change anything major that went through in my life because it made me who I am and what I am. I would change some things, but you shouldn't live with life with regret. Masashi
yeah,
Miyamoto, one of my favorite philosophers, he said, "Do not waste time living with regret. All you can do is move forward." So that's what I try to do.
yeah, yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. And
Thank you.
finally, if you would like to say anything, any parting words to people, those that are listening now and those who would be listening later, and you really wanted to make an endearing impact upon them from your personal perspective, what would you say?
What I would say is reach out to me. If you need to talk, if you need help, if you need anything, especially in regards to mental health, I can help you or I can point you in the right direction. So my new site is www.metta.com, and that's the quickest way to get in touch with me.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for sharing and thank you for being with us. We just want you to stick around for a couple of minutes more,
Sure.
um, not too long,
Okay.
because I have other stuff to do myself.
Right, I got
Uh,
you.
I know the producer, he has this commitment, but it's wonderful to just have a few minutes to reflect.
Yes, sir.
We have come to the end of this amazing episode, people. I just want to thank you guys for all your commitment, your support, your comments, your questions, your openness, and you are helping to build this amazing community that we can come together and support each other. The internal motivation and the external inspiration that eventually would lead to transformation. And that's God's desire for everyone. So at the end of the day, we want to always let you know that in all that you do all that you can to keep breaking out of depression. So long, guys. Godspeed. God bless. Bye for now. Until our next episode next Tuesday, God's willing. Keep safe, keep peace, keep in love. And to God be the glory. Until next time.
There ain't got no way I'm gonna make it without my Lord, no. Ain't got no way I'm gonna make it without my Lord, no. Ain't got no way I'm gonna make it without my Lord, no. Ain't got no way I'm gonna make it without my Lord. Trouble in my way, but daily hear me say, ain't got no way. Ain't got no way, ain't got no way, ain't got no way. The harvest is plenty, Lord, but the workers are so few.